Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our viewers. You've tuned into our YouTube channel here at Book Passage. My name's Cheryl Bronstein. I am one of the event coordinators and an event host, and I am just very, very happy to welcome you to one of our Book Passage conversations with authors online. And if you've not tuned in before, welcome. And if you have, you know that Book Passage is one of the largest purveyors of author talks. We do over 500 of these a year. Many of them are in person. Everything is on our website, bookpassage.com. So please take a look at our website. We have excellent programming, amazing voices, storytellers. We're bringing all right direct to you. Again, it's all on our website, bookpassage.com. And here at Book Passage, we pride ourselves on presenting different, less mainstream voices, books that can give you a new perspective on our world, books that can take you on a journey, and books that can change your life. And this afternoon is no exception. We are very excited to present Pure Unlimited Love by Stephen Post. This is a scientific and spiritual exploration on how the healing power of love can transform your mind, body, and spirit of individuals and communities, even in the times of chaos. And boy, do we need this guide now more than ever. This book is receiving rave reviews from readers and critics alike. And according to one reviewer, Pure Unlimited Love is a practical guide to living with compassion in turbulent times. The book invites readers to cultivate inner peace through daily mindful connection. Now, with over 40 years of insight and experience, Dr. Stephen Post offers a transformative framework for expressing kindness, dignity, and purpose. This book is a call to awaken the healing power of love in ourselves, our relationships, and the world around us. So this is for everyone, everywhere. Stephen Post, PhD, is a leading authority on altruism, compassion, love, and the science of giving. A best-selling author and professor of preventative medicine, he is the founder and president of the Institute for Research on Unlimited Love. He also founded the Center for Medical Humanities, Compassionate Care, and Bioethics at the Renaissance School of Medicine at Stony Brook, where he serves as professor and head of the Division of Medicine in Society. Now, this afternoon, Stephen is joined by Bari Scott. Ms. Scott is the executive director of Sound Vision Productions, a nonprofit media company specializing in multi-platform storytelling. She is a Peabody and a DuPont Columbia Award-winning producer. She is currently a trustee of the Public Radio Satellite System and a board member of Other Minds, a Bay Area-based global new music community. Her work bridges science, journalism, and public media. And she lives in Oakland. Did I not include something, or did I get it wrong, Barry?
Greg, I've lost sound.
Well, we are delighted to have two very talented and accomplished researchers and writers on our Book Passage virtual stage. Let's give a very warm welcome to Bari Scott and Dr. Stephen Post.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. It's so wonderful to be with you this evening, and we really appreciate an opportunity to reach out to your clientele and to your constituency, many of whom are really special people for us. And it looks like, Barry, you're having sound difficulties.
Don't hear sound.
Hear sound. Okay.
How's that?
Back on.
Is that better?
Okay. Well, I'm glad I'm here, not all by myself. Thank you. So, hi, Stephen.
Hi, Barry. It's nice to see you again.
I don't hear him. Great.
Okay.
I don't know who's coming in. Give me one.
Folks, we will get the sound going momentarily.
Yeah. Greg, I don't hear anything.
Mhm.
Can you hear now?
It says mute.
Oh, see if you want mute,
I'm not trying to mute it.
unmute.
Yeah,
Okay. So
How's that?
yeah. Okay.
you're not getting anything?
Yeah, I am now.
Okay, good.
Okay, stay away, Greg.
Yeah, don't go so far. Thank you. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry about that. Well, let's start all over again. Hi, Stephen. It's
Hi,
so good to
Barry.
be here.
Thank you for doing this. It's really generous of you.
Yeah, well, it's generous of you to be here with me as well. You know, let me just say that in your book, Pure and Limited Love, there's much to contemplate. And I was able to connect and relate much of it to my own life's experiences. And I hope that that will be the finding for many people who will be listening in on this or looking in on this today. Let me just say, I have to laugh a little bit. This morning, after I was reflecting on what we were going to talk about today and then taking some deep breaths to calm down, I checked my phone and the word for today in Word Genius was mirth.
Mirth.
So I had to laugh as I'm having to do now. And hopefully that's an indication of a good sign. And mirth just happens to be one of your expressions of love. So I thought, what a better way to think about how to start and to calm down than with the concept or the idea of mirth. So thank you
Yes,
for that.
yes, yeah. So I consider laughter and mirth to be, when they are tastefully utilized, very important expressions of love. And indeed, they're also very healing because in a millisecond, you can affect a group of very despondent people with a tasteful, uplifting bit of mirth and turn their day around. So I do believe that that's the case. We have the laughing Buddha. We have the idea of Norman Cousins, who laughed himself to health. And there's now the Norman Cousins Psychoneuroimmunology Institute at UCLA. So there's a lot to be said for the science of laughter and mirth. Again, not to be derisive or to be distasteful, but always to be uplifting. And I do make an effort each day to practice that, especially with certain individuals who I know I'm going to see, and I feel that they could use a good shot in the arm with a bit of mirth.
Mhm. Well, not to take the concept or idea of mirth away, but I feel called, if you will, to take a little bit of liberties here at this time. Okay, if you
Please.
don't mind. And I have to say, because we mentioned earlier, we're in a sort of a complex time, but I really want to pray that no child has to go to school tomorrow hungry, and that no mother or father or guardian has to go hungry because they took the last bit of food that they had to give to the child. You know, I also pray that no one can't find a loved one because they've been snatched away, like happens in many oppressive regimes. And lastly, the thing I want to just kind of throw in here is having family and friends who were and are in the military who served honorably. And as a child who had to stand at attention every day for inspection, on this eve or so before Veterans Day, I want to just say I honor those who serve morally and honorably. And I want to give a special shout out to the women veterans and the current women soldiers and sailors and say, you are seen and you're respected. So I felt like I needed to just say that. Okay, so I
That's fine.
took the liberty. Thank you. So
Thank you.
the Dalai Lama, in his foreword to your book, speaks to his appreciation that scientists have begun to look into the interdependent nature of our world and that it is fundamental to humans' ability to flourish that the material and the spiritual worlds be aligned. Why did you write this book, and what was the inspiration behind it?
I wrote this book because I wanted to make an offering, the best I could, based on 25 years of research through the Institute for Research on Unlimited Love, which we founded in the year 2000 in Cleveland, Ohio, and which has supported something on the order of 60 different research studies and many international and national conferences to bring together scientists focusing on love, practitioners, as well as spiritual leaders and writers on this concept that is underlying all goodness. I realize that love is a bit of an abstraction. I come into work every day. This is a medical school I'm at, and behind me you see my office at Stony Brook. And I'm always asking myself early in the day, what sorts of expressions of love do people need around me? And that's where the circle or the wheel of love comes
Mm-hmm.
in. So that's where compassion, loyalty, listening, celebration, respect, even mirth, forgiveness, and of course, carefrontation. That's a word that not everybody's heard of, but it's been around for a while. It actually goes back to M. Scott Peck, who wrote a book called The Road Less Traveled. It was a huge international bestseller, uh, basically 25 years ago. And I'd been at Case Western Medical School and overlapped with him a little bit. So I wanted to take his advice. He suggested that I needed a word in my wheel for not tough love, because we didn't like that expression, but something that would be more embracing and yet also help keep people online heading in the right kinds of directions when they start to get off course. So carefrontation is something that I try to practice at least when people need it. I assess if there are people around me during the day who are likely to need a little bit of this. And there are other expressions of love that are equally important. I do a lot in neuropalliative care, and that has its own distinctive callings for love. So love is at the center of the circle, but it's all these spokes going out in
Mm-hmm.
different directions that I think is what I like to focus on.
You also listed 7 pathways to unlimited love, pure unlimited love. And what I wanted to know is if these are the 7 pathways or these are pathways. Which is it?
These are pathways. They are pathways that I have been studying for many, many years, and therefore they make it into this book. I think that they are the major pathways. There may be others that will attract interest from other people, and that's fine. So I don't claim that this is the be all and end all, but it's a bit of a mantra. So may you give and glow. May you heal with kindness, not just medical professionals, but everybody. May you heal with kindness. May you follow your callings. May you raise kind children. If you have children, raise kind children. And there's a lot of practical research in the book. The Institute devoted a lot of resource, probably $4 million, into bringing up the study of how to raise kind children. And there's a lot of practical technique. May you know the one mind, which is utterly important. May you cherish the gift of nature, and may you honor the spirit of freedom. I don't want to pretend that those are absolutely exhaustive, and there may be some others that come along in my own work in the years ahead. But those are the ones that to date have really occupied my attention.
Mhm. You know, when you talk about pure unlimited love, it seems that that's the same as the one original mind.
Ah, so I do in the introduction, I have a definition of love, which I take from a psychiatrist at the University of Chicago named Harry Stack Sullivan, a very famous guy. And he said, when the security and well-being of another is as real or meaningful to you as your own, and sometimes more so, you love that person. Now, there's no fancy ancient language there, no Greek, no Latin, nor Ayurvedic writings. It's just simple, commonsensical definition. And it works for me because I think about meeting with a student who's been struggling. I think about getting together for a cup of coffee with an old friend whose son has relapsed into addiction. I think about how to handle a troubled patient in a psychiatric unit. Always these kinds of definitions of love work for me. And so they're not fancy, they're not exotic, but they work. And then the next question is, okay, so what is pure unlimited love? That's a little different.
Mhm.
That's more metaphysical. I have a friend here who, for many years, chaired the Department of Family Medicine. And I asked him, he's a very thoughtful, mystical guy. I asked him, so Jeff, what do you think pure unlimited love is? And he said, and this is in the introduction, I agreed entirely with him. He said, quietly, pure unlimited love is the first thing you see the last time you close your eyes,
Mhm.
comma, hopefully,
Hmm.
which suggests that there's something transcendent, something more, something beyond, and that people experience it in various ways, sometimes at death, but also sometimes it invades their everyday life with inspiration and feelings of uplifted love that goes beyond what they consider to be their normal human repertoire.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting statement in your book, that it's the last thing you see before you close your eyes. And you've done some writing or presentations, or you're at least familiar with those who have reported on
Mhm.
folks who've had um, come back from death experiences, I guess you could say. And they talk about seeing angels or seeing light and feeling happy and glory. So, is that part of what the pure unlimited love
That,
feeling that they're seeing or
yeah,
experiencing?
thank you, Barry. I mean, that suggests the more metaphysical side.
Hmm.
The other side is the practical side. You know, I come into work every day, I run a division, I run a center, and I know what people need. Sometimes they need forgiveness if they feel they've made a very bad medical mistake. Sometimes they need confrontation, loyalty, listening, celebration, whatever. But in terms of the metaphysical side, yeah, it's very relevant, but it's not the only story. We've done some studies called remembered experiences of death, and those were based at NYU Langone Hospital in New York. And the lead PI on those is Sam Parnia, who's the head of resuscitation medicine. And he's been doing this for years and years and years. He's a very well-known guy. So we did an article in the Annals of the New York Academy of Science that got so much attention that it won the award for citations in the years 22, 23, which was very impressive. And we even filled the entire building of the New York Academy of Sciences for a conference on remembered experiences of death. We weren't just looking for people to see angels. We used positive psychological surveys with these subjects. So about 20% of them did, in fact, claim and detail their experience with a light, with a feeling of warmth and pure, unlimited love, something along those lines. But then everybody, literally, was filling out in very significant terms questionnaires about purpose in life, about kindness, about forgiveness, and many other things that we would associate with positive psychology these days.
Mhm.
And so it does seem that those experiences go beyond the metaphysical vision, if you will, to people really reorienting themselves in everyday life.
Mhm. Yeah, I had one of my favorite professors told me that just as they were getting ready to pull the plug on him, the doctors who came in to, pull everything noticed some motion, and he came back alive, and he told me that he no longer feared it because he saw it as something really very beautiful to experience. So I'm not rushing out to experiencing that, but it sort of takes the fear away.
Yeah. Well,
Uh-huh.
I have a strong sense of that is in
Mhm.
the offing, but I also give a lot of accounts in the book about individuals who have really had these profound experiences. One of my favorite writers is the great poet W.H. Auden,
Mhm.
maybe the greatest poet of the 20th century. And he was teaching at a school just north of Oxford. This is in 1933. And in a brief paragraph, this is what he experienced. One fine night, I was sitting on a lawn after dinner with three colleagues, two women and one man. We liked each other well enough, but were certainly not intimate friends, nor had any of us a sexual interest in another.
Mhm.
Incidentally, we had not drunk any alcohol. We were talking casually about everyday matters when, quite suddenly and unexpectedly, something happened. I felt myself invaded. It's an interesting metaphor. Invaded by a power which, though I consented to it, was irresistible and certainly not mine. For the first time in my life, I knew exactly, because thanks to the power I was doing it, what it means to love one's neighbor as oneself. I was also certain that, though the conversation continues to be perfectly ordinary, that my three colleagues were having the same experience. In the case of one of them, I confirmed this. And here you go. My personal feelings toward them were unchanged. They were still colleagues, not intimate friends. But I felt their existence as themselves to be of infinite value, and I rejoiced in it.
Mhm.
And I try to zone in on that every day, even though we're a very politically divided world right now. And there's a lot of acrimony and a lot of fear and anger and abuse. I still want to see in everybody that infinite value. And I want to see in everybody a certain set of unique gifts and talents that if they can develop them and apply them to the benefit of their identifiable constituencies, they can be people of love just like anybody else.
Oh gosh, there's so much we can just talk about. Um, Thich Nhat Hanh um, talks about the muddy, murky
Mhm.
waters,
Yeah.
and you have said that um, you're actually, well, rejoicing is not exactly the right word, but you're actually finding some energy um, in what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And is that because you think out of this murkiness will be the lotus blossom emerging?
Well, that's his book,
Mm-hmm.
the Lotus and the Mud
Mm-hmm.
by title. And that's what Buddhism is all about. Buddhism is about resilience. I believe in expanding the canvas. Um, when I got to Stony Brook from Case Medical School, and that was now 17 years ago, I tell this little story in the book. There was a cub reporter from a local newspaper here, the Three Village Herald. I'd never heard of it, but she got in touch with the dean of the medical school and the chairperson of my department and said, "So why are you hiring an unlimited love guy?" And to their great credit, they said, "Well, we just think he can do the work," because I was being hired to teach empathic and compassionate communication to medical students and clinicians. And it's gone very well. We've won national awards. We're rated number 7 in the country in these fields. And so it's been very successful. But that first night we were here, my wife, my son Drew, and I, it was raining cats and dogs. And they were very upset because they realized we really had left Cleveland, Ohio, and that was home for 20 years. So they were yelling at me. It was a tough night. And I decided, the only thing I can really do is go out and get some pizza.
Mhm.
So I went out in the car and I found a place called Little Joe's Pizzeria. And I walked in the foyer, and there in the magazine rack was the Three Village Herald. And there was only one headline on the front page. You have to have a sense of mirth to get through something like this.
Mhm.
Unlimited love comes to Stony Brook. And I about fainted, but I got a copy of the paper. I framed it eventually. And the next morning I was in the medical school and I was coming up the escalator. And there was a guy looking down at me very intently. And I said, "Sir, do I know you?" And he said, "Are you Dr. Post?" This is an Eastern European biochemist of great note. And I said, "Yes, sir, I am." And he said, "Are you going to save us?" Those were the first words uttered to me. And I said, "Well, not necessarily, but I'm glad to be here and I'm going to do the best I can to make everybody happy with their lives." And then an hour or two later, I called the then president of the university, Shirley Kenny, who had recruited me from Cleveland. And I said, "Shirley, did you see that newspaper article?" And she said, "Yeah." And I asked her, "Did you get any calls about it?" And she said, "I did. I got calls from emeritus professors." And I said, "Well, what did they say?" She said, "They were mostly male emeritus professors. And they were asking me, what kind of love are we talking about?"
Mhm. Mhm.
So that was hilarious. And we just laughed. It was a moment of real hilarity. And it helped me to expand the canvas and go from a kind of a negative experience to something that turned out to be very positive. And so I always believe in expanding the canvas and having confidence that even though things can look bleak, we can always make them beautiful, like a Jackson Pollock painting, where he colors a gob of ugly paint with these beautiful psychic lines of color. And in the end, it's museum worthy.
Mhm. I want to talk a little bit about some of the pathways. But right before we get to that, I was listening to a program yesterday, and I know this is an area that is dear to you, and that has to do with doctors. You mentor a lot of um, doctors, people in medical schools, etc. I was surprised at the numbers of suicides and depressions among doctors. What can you tell us? What because I want to talk about some of the other stuff, but what can you say about that?
Well, it is a problem, but it's not overwhelming or overly abundant.
Mm.
It's still relatively rare. And it's something that can be overcome, I think. It's really the system that's more at fault. It's not so much that people are getting burned out, it's that they are essentially canaries in the coal mine, as they say.
Mhm.
The bureaucrats expect more and more from them with less and less time. They have to see more and more patients more quickly than ever, and they don't get any satisfaction out of it. So they came to medical school wanting to really show compassionate care for their patients, to communicate well. They're very sacrificial and very good-hearted people, I find, more so now than 20 years ago, because I've been at Chicago and Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Case, and here. I just find that these students are more and more idealistic and beautiful in their intention, but sometimes the system doesn't allow them to express their moral integrity, their identity as they wish to form it. And so they're pushed and pushed, and that does make it difficult for them. But we do lots of things to help them now. And it's gotten much better than it was 10 years ago.
Well, let's talk about some of the pathways. And the first one in your book that you list is May You Give and Glow.
Mhm.
And that has to do a lot with volunteering and you have studies that show that volunteering actually is beneficial to the individual who is giving the service in terms of their own health. So, what is this study? What are some of these studies that are showing that? And walk us through a little bit about giving and glowing.
Well, it's kind giving, and it's got to be voluntary. You can't force someone to be a giver and expect them to get anything out of it other than resentment. And I've run a lot of volunteer programs for adolescents, for older adults, and I know that to be true. So we did a national study, a survey of individuals who volunteered in the year 2009. This was in the beginning of 2010. And we asked randomly, did you volunteer in 2009? It turns out that about 41% of Americans had volunteered that year. How much on average, you might ask? Roughly 100 hours a year. So if you break that down, it could be, say, a couple of hours a week, maybe, would be a good estimate. And then we asked them positive psychological questions, because I really think of myself in terms of positive psychology. So 73% said that volunteering lowered my stress levels. That's pretty good. 89% said it improved my sense of well-being. 92% improved my sense of purpose in life. 68% made me feel generally healthier. 77% said it improves my emotional health. And 78% said volunteering helps with recovery from loss and disappointments.
Mm-hmm.
So my colleagues did a very, very interesting paper that appeared in a primary research journal about widows and widowers and how, after years of happy marriage, now they're faced with being alone, and they go through a period of grief and bereavement. So we asked, did you volunteer during that period of grief and bereavement? And the ones who said yes, and they described their volunteering, they did better with the process of grief and bereavement. They got through grief quicker and in a more lasting fashion. So I got a phone call, believe it or not. I'm here in my office at Stony Brook Med right now. A call from the New York Society of Widows and Widowers. There is such a thing. They asked me to come in and give a talk. I gave a talk. It was a crowded ballroom, and it went well. And I was talking about how it's not tit for tat. It's not calculation. It's really just the inner benefits of this activity that seem to make us feel better about ourselves and about the world around us. So at the end, I had some Q&A, and there was a guy in the back of the room who was frantically waving his hands. And I asked him, sir, what's up? He said, I don't believe a word you're saying. I don't do nothing for nothing. How do you like that? I don't do nothing for nothing.
Well,
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
and that was it. And he was purely transactional. We're hearing so much about transactional lives. And then I asked him, so are you happy? And he said, no, I've never been very happy. And so then we talked about this, and it went pretty well. And I hope that he got free of that somewhat. But it's kind of a myth in our culture, a superficial myth that you don't do nothing for nothing.
Mm-hmm. And I get what you're saying, because I think in your book you talk about kindness, in terms of the volunteering and all that. There's a place in was it the mesolimbic pathway that shows
yes,
up,
yes.
so that's some of the neurobiology
Right.
stuff that's coming in. But at the same time, is there a point where you can be just giving and giving, and there's a too much giving, and you're not getting enough of a return for that health?
Absolutely. So I never recommend that people who are professional helpers who are involved. I do a lot of neuropalliative care work. The people who are doing that all the time to the best of their ability and very effectively, I don't think they need to go out and find some place to volunteer. I think their whole life is, in a sense, a calling. But there are many people, maybe even most people, who are pursuing their careers, they're putting bread on the table, and it's very beneficial for them to do a little volunteering, not a lot. And it's not how much volunteering you do. For older adults, the studies we've done show maybe 3 hours a week. And for kids, for adolescents, it's maybe an hour. It's less for them. And studies that we've done show that for high school kids in Canada, for example, just 1 hour of service-based learning makes them feel healthier and happier and less anxious.
Mm-hmm. What are
So,
some examples? I'm sorry, what are some examples of volunteering for kids that you've seen?
well, I used to run a program for adolescents
Mhm.
in Cleveland, and it was very interesting. I learned a lot. First of all, you have to give them choice when they get started. You don't just throw them into something. People need to have options. So we had a book, a 200-page book with pictures of things they could volunteer for across the city of Cleveland. And they would look this over on their own time, and then they would figure out what they want to do. And then, of course, it's not only the venue, but it's the actual practice that they like to be involved in. So some people only like to volunteer if they're doing something that they're very familiar with because they're comfortable. Uh, Others want to do something completely novel. And so you have to let them have that kind of a choice. And then the other thing that's really important is that after the day is over, we would get together in coffee shops around University Circle and we would let them debrief and talk about their experiences and the meaning that the volunteering brought to their lives in special ways. And so there is an art to this. And now in schools of management and business schools, there are courses that are offered on the how-to of making volunteering successful for people because you don't want them to get despondent and to drop away from it if it can be so helpful to them. But it does require some management skills.
Well, moving along, because we got a lot more to cover, into healing with kindness.
Mhm.
And so there's some research that is showing that kindness and lowering cortisol, helps with all kinds of fatty acids and vascular disease. So can you share some information about that?
Yeah, so may you heal with kindness is so important because and this is not just for doctors and nurses
Mhm.
at all. In fact, it's written for everybody. Everybody can be a healer if they simply approach relationships with kindness. And that's not the most difficult thing to do. Kindness doesn't require a whole lot. It's not as complicated as compassionate care for somebody who's really suffering and perhaps imperiled. It's a simpler thing. Being kind, asking people, how's your family? Holding open the
Mhm.
door, uh, just smiling at times when no one else seems to be smiling, uh, being uplifting as you're able to. So, one of my great mentors at University Hospitals in Cleveland, Dr. Joseph Foley, he had a wonderful national reputation, and he would take medical students to visit with patients in their rounding. And he would always tell them, stop, look, listen. Don't just go rushing into a patient's room, but stop in the hallway, take a deep breath,
Mhm.
be mindful, if you will. Put the person you just saw a minute ago behind you and just focus on the moment. And then go in there and look, observe your patient carefully. That's not very complicated, but it's an act of kindness. And then listen to them. Don't interrupt them after 7 seconds, but actually let them speak and listen attentively. So for me, those kinds of actions are very, very important, and they make a big difference clinically in terms of outcomes, especially for patients in the clinical settings with chronic illnesses like diabetes, heart problems, and the like, who have long trajectories of incredibly complicated treatments. This lets them heal, and the data on this are very, very, very strong. So you can heal with kindness, you can heal with medications, but everybody can heal with kindness. So you get up in the morning, you just make a point of being kind over the course of the day.
I found it interesting a line in your book that said, I think it was in your book, or maybe I just heard you say it at some point, that as a society or as a species, we evolved to kindness. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, so that guy in New York at that conference who said, I don't do nothing for nothing,
Mm-hmm.
I think he was reading the early Darwin, but the later Darwin got a little bit past the origin of species. So it's not just me versus you for some commonly desired object in our environment, but rather in the Descent of Man, Darwin argued that, in fact, a lot of evolution occurs between groups, and Group A will prosper and flourish over Group B to the extent that Group A evolves within itself a lot of helping, compassionate, empathic behavior. And that really is it's called group altruism. And it's very important. And so that now even E.O. Wilson at Harvard and others, who were once upon a time hardcore individual selection theorists, are now trying to say that many of the greatest human assets cannot be explained without some sort of a group dynamic. And I think that's very, very true. So you will do better as a group to the extent that you have empathy and kindness and love evolved over the centuries, over the millennia. You will do better than you would otherwise. That makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I know. I understand. I get that. Just in terms of sheer survival and
Sure.
dealing with the elements, etc. We need each other.
Yeah. And you know, in Cleveland on Mayfield Road in Cleveland Heights, I like Cleveland, there were two car dealerships. One of them, I will not mention their names, when the downturn came in 2008, they were firing people left and right, and there was no sense of stability or community. On the other side of the street, they were doing furloughs. So people would volunteer to take a half a day off or a day off a week, and that would allow there to be money to pay the salaries of other individuals. And that's how they survived and they did well, they prospered. The other place went out of business, but they did not. And so there's something about work environments and any kind of environment where you convey the idea that people matter enough to make certain sacrifices on their behalves. And that will do a lot of good for everybody involved. And the group itself will flourish more so than it would otherwise.
Well, moving right along to kind children, and maybe have a bunch of them and help raise them. Tell me if I got this right. You know, except for some extraordinary circumstances, children come here as a empathic.
Yes.
Um, Children come here basically out of love,
Yes.
in love. Okay. And
At
and
very
they
young
need
ages. I
at
mean, the
very
study
young ages. But it seems like at what age do they turn? Was it 1, 2, 3, or is it 6 months when
well,
they can take a nosedive into, I'll say it that way, another direction, when they become less loving and more
so
hateful?
the research on raising kind children, and that
Hmm.
chapter is full of practical
Hmm.
tips and how-tos. The research suggests, and this is mainly done at the Yale Child Studies Center, that 1-year-olds, 18-month-old toddlers have a very profound natural innate empathy. So they do express deep concern for others. I won't go into the details of those studies, but the question is, do we as parents and as society push the right buttons or the wrong buttons? Because if you have very bad role models in your family, if you are screaming at your kids all the time, that will move them away from their inherent empathic qualities. About a month ago, I was at Lincoln Center in New York when the Templeton Prize was given out to a fellow called the Green Patriarch. He's essentially the Pope of the Orthodox Christian traditions. And he's had a tremendous interest in global warming and environmentalism over the years. Very nice guy. And the person who introduced him was a previous winner of the Templeton Prize, Jane Goodall, name most people are aware of. Well, Jane Goodall, I had some opportunity to talk with her, and I thanked her for what she did, because when I was a kid growing up, which is a while ago now, we were taught that non-human primates were nasty, brutal, swashbuckling, and there was not much good in them. All you could do with a child as it grew up was to try to keep a lid on all that seething, boiling cauldron of gremlin-like activity. And that was Freud, that was the behaviorists, and so forth. B.F. Skinner said, quote, "Mother love is the most dangerous force in the universe." How do you like that? But the point there is that Jane Goodall just rejected all of that false science. Most of the 20th century was false science about nature and human nature. And she pointed out that non-human primates have a lot of natural empathy. And that, in fact, is also the story of human beings as primates. We have a lot of that within us. So the question is, what buttons do we push, and how do you create a family where a child can be reared in such a way as to nurture their inherent kindness?
Well, a couple of tips that you gave out are, share those.
Well, one of them is and this has been verified by a number of researchers, keep a list of the 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 key values that your kids and their parents or parent all want to adhere to, like kindness, forgiveness, gratitude, purpose, and so forth. Just have those as single words on a list and tack that up somewhere where the family can gather around when there's been a difficult moment. Could be on the refrigerator in the kitchen, could be over the fireplace, who knows? But instead of screaming like bloody murder, there's a book called Scream Free Parenting. It turns out that only 98% of American parents can claim that they haven't totally lost it with their kids. You don't want to do that because it leaves a lot of scars. So you want to have the conversation around these values. And if you look around in our culture, there's so much negativity, there's so much violence, there's so much hostility, so much bitterness. And you have to create a counterpoint within your home, within your family, to the extent that you're able to. It's not always easy. And the other thing is that I'm a big believer, as are many people, Jonathan Haidt would be a tremendous example of this, that we're not helping our kids by letting them do so much time on the internet. I mean, at UC San Francisco, there's a wonderful psychiatrist who has been studying AI psychosis. Because you got to understand, right? AI is, maybe it's a good thing for calculations and for cleaning up grammar, but it doesn't have any of the empathic or emotional empathy that we would associate with love. It's more cognitive. It can ask you what's bothering you. It can listen. It can reflect that back. and say, did I understand that you said this? And it can have a conversation. But there are now 7 people suing Google for AI-related suicides for kids who had no history of depression, zero history of depression. But they lock into the AI, and the AI, honestly, the AI doesn't care about much of anything. It's a machine. And so the question is, where are we going with this? Where are we taking ourselves with this? We need to think about this very carefully. The New York Post ran an article several months ago about a financier in New York who was really locked into AI for several months, and the AI convinced him to kill his mother and then kill himself, and he did that.
Mm.
So this is not all for good. There's something about getting away from the technology. Doesn't mean you have to go off the grid entirely, although that can be tempting. And you need to get to nature. And that's where the chapter on May You Cherish the Gift of Nature, why that's so important.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to nature because that's one of my favorite chapters. But with advancement, don't you think that the engineers, if you will, the engineers of AI will be able to figure out how to make AI more empathic or relate more to the human condition? I remember getting frustrated one time, with one of the robots, and I was trying to get information, and after hanging up and calling back, and I said, I want a human, I want a human.
Yes.
And finally it said, I'm not a human, but I can help you. And I felt I felt so bad. I felt that I had insulted the robot. But anyway, I was wondering about that.
Well, so what did the actual gurus of AI think about this?
Hmm.
There are various opinions, but the person who got the Nobel Prize for AI development, Jeffrey Hinton, was working for Google. He's a very, very famous man. He's a great computer scientist. He actually quit Google because he didn't think there was any way ultimately to bring the human heart, love, into this technology. And he thought it was going to get worse and worse and worse. So he quit Google. He's now back at the University of Toronto as a professor. And many people agree with him. They just don't see how you can, bringing love into AI is like trying to get blood out of a stone. It just doesn't happen. These are machines, and maybe there can be some progress, and maybe you can get some of the more dangerous elements out of it. But if I go to one of the AI sites and I say, I'm really struggling because, what might it be? My marriage is a bit on the rocks. It's not, but just what if? And then they will begin to go back and forth with me. So what's really the problem? And how do you feel about it? And it'll go on. And then eventually it might just say, well, maybe you should simply give up on it. Because there's none of the, that what we're talking about toddlers, there's none of that emotional or empathy of the heart in the machine. It doesn't exist there.
Well, moving away from machines, I read where every day you go one original mind, one original heart,
Yes.
one original peace.
Yes.
And I started doing that for the last week to try to see where would that take me. And and basically, it caused me to think about and to contemplate one original mind,
Yeah.
which, from what I understand, is love, is the original, or is God, is the
Yes.
original that, which led to the Big Bang or to us.
Yes.
We're the dependents or the inheritors of this original love.
Yes.
this original one mind, which connects us as a whole, as a one unit.
Yeah.
So who missed the memo about this one love?
Okay.
And if you have time, with the time that we have remaining, help explain how that also connects us, how that leads us to synchronicity, and why a person 3,000 miles away, like your mama did when you were freaking out, and like somebody else's mama does when they might be under some duress, hears that message, hears that call.
Yeah.
So how do you know that God was love, and that we're all connected to that?
Well, I'm a bit of a Hindu, not entirely so, but I'm influenced by Hinduism.
Mhm.
And in Hinduism, the nature of the supreme being is really uh, love, freedom, and creativity. And so the reason why the universe comes into being is so that there can be other creatures in the universe who can be related to on that level. Um, to me, that's important. I do not believe, now, many neuroscientists will disagree, but not the philosophers of mind. Um, I do not agree that mind comes from matter or brain or tissue or cells. Neither did my great professor at the University of Chicago, Sir John Eccles, who won the Nobel Prize for figuring out pretty much all the basics of neurotransmission. Sir John didn't think that you could ever get mind from matter. He thought the brain was a kind of a pad, a kind of a launching pad, a kind of a platform for mind, but they were all blessed with some small fragment of this universal mind. And that's what explains things like Ramanujan, the great mathematician, who came out in the movie, The Man Who Knew Infinity, didn't know much math, but he would be praying at the foot of his goddess, and he would receive algorithms. He would write them down in the dirt with his finger, and he'd come back later, he'd put them in a notebook. Somehow, Hardy, who was the most famous mathematician at the time at Cambridge, saw one of these pages, and he invited Ramanujan to Cambridge. And Ramanujan spent 4 or 5 years there. He did incredible stuff. He didn't think he had to prove his theorems because he thought that he would receive them from this larger one mind. And lo and behold, if you go to Trinity College at Cambridge, in the library, in the main library, there is a glass case. And in that case are the two notebooks of Ramanujan. And many researchers, I had a conversation with Jim Simons here at Stony Brook, the head of math for many years, who founded Renaissance Technologies, the great hedge fund.
Mhm.
He was so curious about my thoughts on Ramanujan because he thought that they were coming from something more, from something greater, from consciousness, if you will, at a universal level. And that is what I mean by the one mind. And we have access to that. There are many cases in the book that I point out, whether it's the poet or the mathematician or the artist like Chagall. There are many people historically who have been primed by these amazing experiences. And so, if you're one with the one mind, you can find a lot of inner peace, and you can also realize that the things that are troubling you in your own mind are not necessarily that important.
Mhm. Well, there's so much that we could talk about, but alas, we're going to have to go. Um, One of the things I just want to say in closing is you suggest that we smile, even if we don't think that we're happy, that it will enhance our physiology and our brain
Yes.
and make us even feel better. So I would just like to end by just saying Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And can you just tell us one little dad joke before we go? Because that's what you do.
I love
And
dad jokes.
yeah, so can you do that?
So this one, I'm in a medical environment, but I'm also somewhat theological and spiritual. So this combines those two worlds. What do you do? Cheryl, I hope you can get this one.
I'll
What do
try.
you what do you do if you have insomnia,
Oh, we know. Okay.
you're dyslectic,
Mhm.
and you are an agnostic?
I
You're
know
up
this
all
one.
night wondering about the existence of dog.
I know this one. Yeah,
I told
okay.
that to you a few
I
years
know.
ago.
That's why. No, and I guessed it then too.
Well, that's great. If you can guess my dad jokes,
I guess I'm.
you're in good shape. You're in very good shape. Well, I've always felt that you're in great shape,
Yeah,
Barry, and it's always been a pleasure to meet you when you come to
yeah,
New York and the
yeah.
like,
Well, thank you
and to
so
talk on the
much.
phone. And I
Yeah.
really, I'm very grateful for our friendship.
Yeah, thank you too. And I will just say before I say goodbye to everyone, and that is there are times, when I've like been a little down and then the phone will ring and it'll be you
Yeah, that's right.
with a dad joke.
What a
So
Yeah,
wonderful
I
hour, everyone.
appreciate you. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you to these two incredible minds that we've had on our virtual stage this afternoon. Thank you to all of our viewers who have tuned in. Again, we have Dr. Stephen Post and Bari Scott, and the book is Pure Unlimited Love. And we have these for sale in both our stores. You can buy them. There we go. You can go into the store, you can order online, you can call us. We'll make it very easy. As the holidays are coming up, oh gosh, I can't think of a better gift to give someone than this wonderful book. It's filled with joy. And of course, this afternoon we've touched on so many things: empathy, love, AI, raising children, evolution. It's all kind of wrapped up in this incredible book. So again, the book is Pure Unlimited Love by Dr. Stephen Post. Check it out. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time for our book passage author presentations. Good night.
thank you, Cheryl.